Today we are privileged to have a remarkable human being, Bruce Simpson, a lawyer, and he's going to speak to us about his attempted suicide, his life with depression and attempted suicide. Welcome to this episode, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I believe we start by you introducing yourself and probably what you do.
All right. Thank you. My name is Bruce Simpson. I'm an attorney. I live in Lexington, Kentucky, the United States, of course. I've been practicing law for 42 years. I enjoy practicing law. I'm a trial lawyer, which means I'm in court trying cases before juries and judges and other folks who make decisions about my client's case. Um, As I say, I love the practice of law. I love representing the little guy, if you will, against the big guy. It's always a challenge, and I embrace that challenge. And I've always been prepared, and I'm grateful to still be here and to still be able to help people in legal proceedings.
Mm. Yeah, so today you're going to tell us about your life in depression. When did you realize you had depression and what could have caused the depression?
I actually did not realize that I had a mental illness
Mm.
until after I was involuntarily um, detained in a state psychiatric hospital following my suicide attempt. Up until
Yeah.
that moment, I thought I just had what I consider a Bruce Simpson personal inadequacy problem that
Mm.
I had had since I was a little boy. And in particular, I never believed I was good enough
Mm.
in the eyes of certain people that um, that was my understanding that I was never good enough, and I carried that understanding with me really up until I attempted to kill myself on January 25th of 2023. Now,
What could have caused what could have caused this perception that you're not good enough, and yet you had, I could say, you had succeeded in life. You are a lawyer, practicing
uh,
lawyer. Why
I,
would you have? Yeah.
in large part, um, my father wanted me to be a professional athlete, and I started practicing diligently when I was 10 years old, hours and hours and hours every day. And my dad's philosophy was that you were never good enough. And if you knew that, you would always strive to get better and better. That if you always held the goal out of being good enough, even if you didn't meet the highest expectations, you would get as good as you were able to get. So that was drilled into me constantly, every day, from the time I was 10 until I was 18 years of age. And I was also taught as a man, as most men are in the United States and maybe around the world. I'm not sure, of course, about other
Yeah.
countries, but in the United States, men were taught to never whine, never complain, um, don't disclose anything of any personal nature to anybody that might cause other people to view you as weak or ineffective. And I was told to keep quiet about how I was feeling about myself, which I never discussed with anybody, to suck it up and be a man. And so that's what I did for almost all of my life. I kept quiet about it. I dare not share how I was feeling with anybody. I didn't believe it would do any good. I didn't believe talking to someone would help me at all. I didn't. I didn't believe a mental health treatment person could talk me out of feeling inadequate. I didn't believe medication would be of any assistance other than to alter my state of consciousness, which I could not afford to do as a lawyer. I had to be sharp and on my game as an attorney. And so I just didn't believe in mental health treatment at all. So I kept it to myself and suffered in silence. And I really did not believe I was worthy, that I was good enough in the eyes of some people until my early 40s, when my colleagues and others in the community would say, Bruce, I saw your trial. You did a great job, and you did, excellent. And I didn't believe them. I thought they were just being nice. I have learned that through my course of treatment that I suffer from what's called imposter syndrome, which means that you don't believe the compliment, you don't believe you're as good in terms of your performance as other people tell you you are. That's part of your mental illness, if you will, that you're just not deserving of those compliments. And so, but it was still good to hear. First time in my life, I'd finally felt worthy, only because other people told me I was a good lawyer. It didn't go to my head. I wasn't arrogant about it, but it felt good. And for the first time in my life, I felt worthy only because people told me I was performing well as an attorney. So that went on. I was doing well. I was had success as a lawyer, but I soon realized that I liked those compliments, and I liked feeling worthy, if only for those limited reasons in the eyes of other people. Not that I felt worthy myself, but at least other people thought I was worthy. And that was good enough for me after not feeling worthy for most of my life up until my early 40s. But I
May
also,
may
go
I
ahead.
ask how was your childhood like? Because looks like there was no affirmation to you as a child, so you grew up not having the confidence. Is that so?
Yeah. I mean, I should have had confidence. I was being successful in my education, but I was always fearful. Fear of failure drove me most of my life. Um, that made me always prepare, which was good because as a lawyer, the critical part of being successful as an attorney and representing other people and being entrusted with their legal problems is you have to be prepared. You have to get into their case, research it, understand it, think about it, think through it, all the different issues that you're going to have to address, and then lay out a plan on how to address them. But yeah, I mean, I was secretly unsure of myself, secretly did not have confidence, but I knew that I could outwork and overcome my lack of confidence if I was fully prepared. But secretly, I believed that other people were smarter than me, which made me work harder so that I would try to overcome and at least be on equal footing with my opponent in a courtroom. But
Did you grow up with both parents in a stable, happy home?
No, my parents constantly fought, argued, called each other awful names. Never, I never heard them say they loved each other, nor did I hear any of them say they loved us. I was asking my brother not too long ago because I was asked in a therapy session, um, when was the last time your parents hugged you? And I thought to myself, I don't remember ever being hugged by my parents. And I asked my
Okay.
brother, and he didn't remember either. It was just how they were. One of the great lessons in life that I have learned is that, at least with respect to most countries, if there is a demonstration where some kind of human activity has been demonstrated to cause harm to another human, the government will adopt a regulation or a law that deals with that issue, like the safety of automobiles, safety of airplanes, competency of doctors, lawyers, therapists, electricians, standards to build a house and live in a house safely. If you don't follow the rules and follow certain standards with respect to those human activities, it's been proven you're going to hurt people. Of all the roles that, and this is what I've learned through my experience, of all the roles that any human being will serve in their life, it's the role of being a parent and nurturing a baby from its birth to young adulthood. But there are no requirements, there are no regulations, no standards that have to be followed for a parent to understand how that's done. They just do it whichever way they want to. As long as they don't abuse the child, they're free to do or not do anything that they believe ought to be done with respect to their role as a parent. And so much of our childhood and so much of our behavior, long term and permanently, comes about through child rearing practices, that it's potluck. It's just by the luck of the draw. Whether you get good parents that are skilled and knowledgeable in how to raise a child, nurture a child, instill confidence in the child, it's just luck. And unfortunately, too many children are unlucky, and they don't have parents that know how to do that, or worse, or subject to abuse, be it mental or physical, and which is counterproductive for their growing into being a successful, well-balanced human beings. So, in my opinion, most of our problems in terms of human behavior start from birth and start
Exactly.
from parents not being equipped to do their job. But
Yeah.
that's been the case for centuries on this planet. So it is what it is, and we deal with it.
Yeah. So, at what point did you think about suicide? What drove you at that spur of the moment?
Well, in my early 40s, when I started to hear I was a good lawyer, it felt good. As I said, the first time in my life, I felt worthy. And I would read about lawyers that would get into trouble, either because they did something improper and they were going to be disbarred from the profession, or they got into some kind of criminal problem and were going to be disbarred or go to prison. And not that I ever thought that I would do anything that caused them to be in that situation. But I thought to myself when I read about them on the front page of the newspaper, or I saw them on television, about how their career was ruined, they were being publicly humiliated, embarrassed to themselves and their family and friends. Excuse me, that I thought to myself, if that was me, I'd kill myself. I could not survive. Once I finally started feeling worthy as a good lawyer in the eyes of others, I could not bear losing that. And I could not bear being humiliated like those people were. And so, really, from my early 40s until I attempted to kill myself in 2023, I was prepared to kill myself if I ever perceived a threat
Mm.
to my reputation as a good lawyer, which was exclusively the basis of my self worth as a human being. I was entirely comfortable with self inflicted death for 30 years.
Yeah, and how I heard you say that it is only after the attempted suicide that you found God.
Well, prior to my suicide attempt, I was a agnostic, a doubter in the existence of God.
Mm.
I've always been a skeptical person, even starting back when I was a little boy, and and so trying to prove the existence of God, of course, is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
and if not impossible in the eyes of the general public. And then I got very aggravated in the United States at what are called televangelists, TV preachers, who were
Yes.
constantly bombarding the networks,
Yeah.
asking for money, and really targeting hurting human beings to give them money, so they could live in multi-million dollar houses and fly around the world in jets and live a
Yeah.
lavish lifestyle. And so I would
Mm.
find a reason to disbelieve because of those people. And the things
Mm.
that they would say, I found zero credibility to. And so I'd always heard the phrase doubting Thomas. I never knew what that was really until about a year ago, honestly. And
Mm.
oddly enough, my first name is Thomas. My middle name is Bruce.
Mm.
Um, so I was aptly named with respect to believing in the existence of God. And
Yes.
that night or that day when I went to a gun shop following being made aware of a mistake I'd made in a legal case, which
Mm.
resulted in me hurting a client for the first time in 41
Oh.
years as a lawyer.
Oh. Okay.
That it was a high profile case. I won at trial. It had a lot of publicity locally in Lexington, Kentucky. It was a big upset win. I was thrilled. We celebrated with my clients, and we won it at trial. About a year after the trial was over, the case had been appealed, and I opened the mail, and I saw that the Court of Appeals had reversed the decision, and I was
Mm.
stunned. I thought it was a clear victory, and in the course of the opinion, I read where I had not filed a brief in the appeal, which
Mm.
I was disbelieving. I'm like, I won this case. Of course, I filed a brief. But I checked and I hadn't. About a year earlier, I'd suffered a brain bleed and from a fall. And one of the consequences of that fall, which I did not know at the time, was memory loss.
Yeah.
And my brief was due at that time, and I forgot to file it.
Mm.
And but when I read in the Court of Appeals decision what I had done. It was a mistake I couldn't fix, I couldn't cure, and I
Mm.
knew that I had to activate my 30-year plan to kill myself because my reputation I thought was over, I was ruined. I hurt a client for the first time ever. I had humiliated myself, lost my career, and my humiliation because of what I'd done would taint my family. They weren't. They didn't need to be victimized by my mistake, and I thought, in my tortured, twisted thinking at the time, that it was better off for everybody, logically, in my own tortured mind, that I was dead. And I went about and executing the plan that I had for 30 years to kill myself. I went to a gun shop. I bought the most powerful handgun they had in the gun shop. I loaded it with hollow point bullets that exploded on impact. I did not want to survive. I wanted to
Mm.
make sure I was dead. I didn't want to be in a nursing home and have people visit me. I was going to be successful. Once I set my mind to something, particularly on matters that I exclusively can control the outcome, like killing myself, they have historically happened. If I control the outcome through my own efforts, they happen. And
Mm.
I was locked on killing myself. I'd had built in contingencies, did not want to survive. And I bought the gun. I went home. My wife was out of town. I wrote a note to her. I put all of my will and my state documents on the kitchen counter. I didn't want to kill myself at home and have her find me like that. I took
Mm.
a taxi or an Uber to a cemetery about 12 miles south of where I live, in a place called Nicholasville, Kentucky. I went to a cemetery
Mm.
where my grandparents are buried and my sister. I wanted to kill myself in a cemetery where nobody was around. And it was in January 25th. It was very cold. I got out of
Mm.
the car, pulled the gun out, decided to test fire the weapon after the driver left to make sure
Mm.
the gun worked. It was a brand new gun. It should have worked. And I pulled the hammer back. It was a revolver, so you could see the bullets on the outside of the chamber. And I saw the bullet rotate into the firing chamber. When I pulled the hammer back, I pointed the gun to the ground, pulled the trigger, and it was loud, much louder than the last time I'd fired a gun, which was 50 years earlier when I was in the Army.
Mm.
And it was loud. It kicked my hand way back over my shoulder. Dogs started barking all around the cemetery. I became
Wow.
concerned that people were going to come out. I didn't want anybody to watch me do what I was about to do.
Mm.
So I called 911, the police, and I reported there was a body in Maple Grove Cemetery in Nicholasville, Kentucky. And the dispatcher that answered the phone asked where the body was. I told her. She asked if I would be there to assist the officer and to locate the body, and I told her that I would. And she told me the officer was en route. So I hung the phone up. I removed the spent bullet casing that had just test fired. I put it in my pocket. Again, I didn't want to make any mistakes. I was going to be successful. I
Mm.
pulled the hammer back on the gun again, and I saw the next bullet rotate into the firing chamber. I put the gun next to the side of my head, and I pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And the hammer of the gun hit the bullet, but the bullet didn't fire. And I was stunned. I was flabbergasted. I was supposed to be dead, but I wasn't dead. And then I see the police officer coming through the front gate of the cemetery toward me. He was about 75 yards away. And I thought quickly about pulling the trigger again, but I froze because I didn't want anybody to see it. I wasn't sure he could see my gun, but I froze and I put the gun in my pocket.
Mm.
Um, he hadn't seen the gun. He drove up. I kind of walked over to his car. He rolled his window down. I explained to him that I didn't have any lies to make up, so I was kind of stumbling. I said, "I'm sorry. It was a garbage bag. It wasn't a body. I'm sorry you had to come out." And
Mm.
he looked at me and said, "Well, that's okay. Thanks for calling it in anyway." He drove off, but he didn't
Yeah.
leave the cemetery.
Mm.
And I wanted to finish my mission. I was going to finish my mission. I was going to kill myself. But he didn't leave, and I didn't want to shoot myself while he was there. So I had nowhere to go. I looked across the street to see what was there. It was cold. I wanted to get warm until he left. And there was a gas station across the street. So I started walking towards it. And then a thought occurred to me to call another lawyer that was in Nicholasville that really had been a good friend of mine. But we'd had a case on opposite each other 5 years earlier. And unfortunately, it got very heated, very contested, and it impacted our friendship. And I had not talked to him in 5 years at all, on the phone or in any form of communication. But for some reason, I thought, call him. His name is Bruce Smith. He's a lawyer. And so I called him. I didn't even think he would answer the phone. It was about 7 o'clock at night. But he answered, and I said, "Hey, can you talk?" I didn't tell him I was down there to kill myself
Mm.
or that I had a gun. I made up some stupid lie. I'm a horrible liar anyway, but I said my wife and I had an argument, and I took an Uber 15 miles to the cemetery to meditate. And now I can tell you, no reasonable person meditates in the
At the
cemetery
cemetery.
at
Yeah.
20 degrees at dark.
Yeah.
But that was the lie I took, and he said, "Well, I'll come and get you." So he did, and we went to a bar. We talked for a couple of hours. We actually healed our friendship, and all the while I'm sitting there in that bar with this loaded gun in my pocket, minus one bullet.
Mm.
And I'm thinking to myself while we're talking, and we're actually, healing our friendship. I didn't tell him I had a gun or that I was down there to kill myself. But I would think to myself while I was talking to him, "Are you still going to do this? Are you going to?" And I got to. I mean, there's no choice for the reason that I've mentioned before. I've hurt a client. I've humiliated myself. I've ruined my career and hurt my family.